Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to my show, Living Well with Dr. Shelia. Today, my guest is Susan Spangler, and we are going to talk about sugar. And we're actually going to talk about, are you consuming too much sugar? Susan, I'll tell you a little bit about her. She's dedicated 20 years of her professional career to advanced training in health and wellness disciplines. She's committed to sharing these teachings and her experiences with her clients to help them achieve their personal goals. Susan's approach to guiding clients is multifaceted, and she has a passion for helping others and preserving the planet. By investigating the relationship between food and health challenges. She is constantly investing her time and energy in supporting, educating, and mentoring others. And she has mentored me, so this is absolutely correct. She holds many certificates from various organizations so that she can better serve her community through food education, health coaching, and other holistic practices. Let's go ahead and welcome Susan to the studio. And she is coming in just a second. Here she is. Hi, Susan. How are you?
I'm great. Hello. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is my pleasure. Susan and I have known each other for quite some time. I love to have guests on the show that I have had a relationship with who I know they are top of their field in what they do. And that's the way I feel about Susan. So you're going to get a lot of information today about health. And specifically, this topic is about sugar. So we're going to start out, and I just want to ask a question, Susan. What inspired you to get educated, to share, and then to research this information on sugar?
Okay. Yes, thank you. I feel kind of like torn between the popularity of it and then my personal story. But I will tell you that from a very young age, I can't explain it. I felt so drawn to help people feel better. I have such a strong memory of being in the basement of my church, teaching aerobics to the moms. And at that time, I didn't really have anything but the passion and the inspiration to just basically help people feel better. And I really just am so grateful that I listened to that, because I didn't realize at the time it would lead me to a lifetime of wanting to know more and to learn more. And that ties in really to the second piece. And I think it's one of the most powerful things that motivates me, not just on this topic and this talk, but to learn more about health, is that I've had my own challenges with health, with leaky gut. And also, I'm not even going to call it an autoimmune disorder, but an autoimmune imbalance. And so I've always been in pursuit of learning more and knowing more, not just for myself, but for the consumption of the knowledge to then share with other people. So I'd say, a combination between just answering a call from the time I was really a little girl to getting my own health challenges, which were super motivating to me.
Understood. Yeah. And I think as we get older, those health challenges become more evident. And that's when we really, if we have not addressed them previously, that's when we really start to address them, because you can really feel it and it starts to affect your health and your wellness. But let's talk about sugar. So what is sugar? So this is a two-part question. What is sugar and how does our body use it?
Yeah, I like to think about the food we eat and that it's more or less broken down into categories. And sugar falls into the category of carbohydrate. We've rephrased them carbs. But a lot of us think about a carbohydrate, first of all, as something bad. And also we might think of pasta or bread. But it falls into really just one of three categories. The food that we eat and that we consume is either a carbohydrate, it is a protein, or it's a fat. That's it. Everything that ends up on our plate or that we consume is one of those three things. And sugar, it is a nutrient, and it does provide something very powerful for the body. And if you've ever had a sugar high or a sugar rush, you know that it actually does do something for you because it provides a form of energy. So when we think of the three different forms of food, sugar falls into the category of a carbohydrate. And fat is a form of food, and protein is a form of food, fuel, and nutrition. So natural and unprocessed forms of sugar, we find them in lots of ways, because a lot of times we think of sugar, we think of a teaspoon of, white granular sugar that we might stir into coffee or tea. But it's found in lots of our foods, and it has different forms. For example, we've got fruit that's got a sugar form in it, which is fructose. And then we have all different kinds of animal milks, especially cow's milk. And that form of sugar within this food is lactose. So it really just falls into one of the natural categories, carbohydrate, protein, and fat, but it's a very different form of a carbohydrate, even as you compare it to things across the scale like animal milks and bread and pasta. So that's where sugar kind of falls in. We use it for lots of things. Certainly, if we've got that sweet tooth, it will kind of scratch that itch of the sugar craving. But it is energy, and we use sugar as its translated form of energy to function. And so our body uses it in what I would like to say a constructive way. Our challenge is what is the destruction factor of too much sugar in our diet?
Okay, and thanks for that answer. So that being said, well, are we really eating too much sugar then? Are we eating too much?
Yeah, and honestly, Sheila, the answer to that is super individual. And I would really want to caution your viewers and inspire them to look individually at themselves, because we may have viewers today that don't consume any sugar. Maybe they don't eat fruit, or they've sort of gotten the religion on sugar and they've removed it from their diet. So this is sort of a general answer to our population. The truth is that America is addicted to sugar.
Yes.
And how do we know that? We know that by the amount of sugar that's produced in our country. And that's an easy statistic to find out. There are a few producers of sugar and suppliers. And when we know how much they produce and sell per year, all we have to do is divide that by the number of people. And what we come up with is that we as Americans consume over 100 pounds of sugar a year. How much we produce by how many people exist, divided by that, that's how we get our number. And to be truthful with you, that statistic is a couple of years old. My guess is probably a little bit higher at this point. Now, for our population within our viewers that don't consume any sugar that they're aware of, if we take that into account, that there are people consuming a lot less than that, that means there are people that are consuming a lot more than that when we take our total number of sugar pounds that are produced per people. So we're definitely consuming a lot of sugar.
Let me just interject for a minute. So, because I just want to go back. So did you say 100 pounds of sugar per
year per person?
Per person.
Yes. And so thank you for clarifying that. And that is what I said. So where is it? It's sweetening beverages, and it's in a plethora of places, not necessarily us putting the teaspoon into the coffee cup. So it's in so many things. It's in so many things that we consume, and we can talk about those. And we can do a little pop quiz, Sheila, and I can get you to name all the places that you think sugar exists. But because it is this primary cause, and this isn't new, of obesity in our country, which is not new information. The problem is the increase in the consumption of sugar is led to the decrease of the consumption of the essential nutrients that we need, iron and all the kinds of things in terms of minerals and real nutrition that our bodies need. So the rise of the sugar consumption, which along with that is our rise in obesity numbers, it is really in contrast to this decrease in the essential micronutrients of the American diet. That is why all around the world we are considered to have the SAD diet, the standard American, diet. It's sad. And when I say these things, I don't mean to disparage people who are doing really, really well or who are sick or on the health journey. But sometimes it takes that, a depletion of our own health, or to hear these statistics over and over again. And what I like to think of when I think of that 100 pounds of sugar that we're consuming, I think of the sack of sugar, in its brightly yellowed, paper. I think 100 sacks of that. It is no wonder that disease is on the epidemic. And to the other side of that, it's no wonder why we can't get rid of belly fat and things that many of us are concerned about. And because we know that these lead to disease. Like, fat is necessary in our body. It has a purpose in evolution, but too much in certain places in the body, we know now are not good for our health. So yes, I think we really are consuming too much. And at the same time, people have been well educated about the dangers of high fructose corn syrup. Corn in its natural form, because it has been in excess in the American culture. They needed to do something with it. So it was transformed into high fructose corn syrup because we had an excess of it in our country. And what we realized, and I don't even know that this is because it was on purpose, but it was in everything that we were eating. And to this day, I looked at 10 products personally last week, and it still exists in many of our products. And it does take a really relentless consumer to become aware of what is actually in our food. And I'll just circle back one more time to your initial question, which was what inspired me to get educated and do the resource. I have a profound need to know what is in my food, where it came from, how it was grown, how the soil was treated. And it's something that I can't sleep over because I know too much about the ignorance that a lot of us have about the sources and the quality and the process of how food got to our table.
But I'm going to ask then, because high fructose corn syrup, over the past couple of years, there has been a lot of information that has been put out about just how dangerous and how it is not really good for our health. And it's very interesting that we can still find it in so many different things, that it's still slid into so many different things. So I really want to encourage people to read labels. You have to read labels, and you have to read the additional ingredients, because they will sneak in a lot of things that you did not even think you were consuming. And you can take this from me, because I just started. I was always a really good label reader, but I decided to take out even more sugar from my diet. And I was actually shocked at how many things had sugar that are pre-prepared.
And I will apologize to you ahead of time. I had actually meant to bring in a sample to show you. I just want to underscore what you're saying. I would consider myself someone who has sourced food for the last 10 years. And I take great pride in who I buy fish from, who I buy beef from, who I buy beans, nuts, and grains from. Take a lot of pride in that. And yet I turned over the back of a small bag of dried organic cherries. What do you think they sweetened the cherries with? Sugar. I had no idea. I was trusting that because the label was organic, which it was, that means this cherry was grown in an environment that was free, it basically certified organic, but free from pesticides and chemicals in its growing process. So sometimes in that process, this doesn't produce the sweetest fruit. So then this trusted manufacturer decides to choose to align with a grower that sweetens with sugar. That's my bad. That was my bad on me. But I think even if you are a fervent label reader, as you become, you can always go back and relook, because it is being slipped into everything that we eat. And here's my thing. I didn't need the cherry sweetened. I would have been fine with the tart cherry. I mean, it was a Bing cherry to begin with. It's supposed to be tart. But it is a job, and it is a full-time job. And just since you brought up the concept of label reading and that, you know, you've gotten more diligent about it through your own journey, you know, my rule of thumb with label reading is this: if you don't know what it is, don't get it. And if it's something that you have to have, look for the different choices in how you can buy it. And if necessary, research this thing that you don't know what it is. Maybe it says organic soy lecithin on it. Soy is not consumed well by lots of people. And there are many populations that should not consume soy. Some can consume organic soy. And soy lecithin is an emulsifier, and it is in a lot of things. I happen to be a dark chocolate lover. Most chocolate on the market is soy lecithin and sugar and milk. So I don't buy a piece of chocolate that is anything but, you know, cacao or cocoa, the pure chocolate, but that's loaded with soy and milk and dairy and eggs and all these other things. So it takes a little bit of effort to still have the things you love. I'm the dark chocolate lover. And of course, one piece is not enough, and we know 6 are too many. But at the same time, you know, you do have to live. And I believe in everything in moderation, but finding the things that are the cleanest. So just kind of circling that back to the high fructose corn syrup and sugar in general is found in so many things that we wouldn't even think of looking at. Can I give you one more example? I don't know if we have time or not, but I could give you one more example.
We have plenty of time. We have plenty of time.
Okay. So recently was wanting to make a recipe that had roasted red peppers in it. And they're a little bit out of season where I live, and they're a little hard to get because of the area that I'm in, and that I'm sort of at the end of a supply chain. So I decided to buy a jar of roasted red peppers. And I look for things like they're not packed in oil. They are, you know, packed in, you know, water and maybe salt, but really basic. Never considered looking at this jar. But when I got it home and looked at it, it was full of sugar. Why? Because the fruit or the vegetable was picked prior to its time, most likely, forced into production, and probably didn't have as much flavor as one might like. Again, I didn't need the pepper to be sweet. You made that choice for me. Now, what I did from then on, because I don't believe in waste, is I rinsed them as much as I could, and then I made note to self, read even that. So I think you could be an expert on this, and yet we are marketed very much so to believe that food is safe, and that if there's a picture of a cow rolling on a hill smiling, that it's okay for us. I think we will start a revolution, the people of this country. And when we demand cleaner food and, real integrity, it will come.
Yeah, I hope that day comes. We've been fighting that for many, many years. The food industry is very powerful. Some of the things that are in our foods in America, they don't even put in foods in other countries because they know just how dangerous and how unhealthy it is. And to go back to label reading, manufacturers will even change. You can buy the same thing for months, whatever, and then just one day they've changed the ingredients. So you really always have to look at your labels, even if it's something that you have bought, I don't know, every week for a year. You still just have to turn it around and just kind of skim. And you had said, you said something about if you don't know what it is, you think about buying it. And my mom and, people who eat back in the day didn't eat anything that was really processed. They are always like, if you can't even pronounce it, think about it. And
Absolutely.
maybe not, and maybe look it up. Some things, not saying that everything you can't pronounce, because some things do need preservatives, but you do need to really look and see.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's just like with your mom, my mother is going to be 90 years old. She was raised with old country ways. I can remember my Italian grandmother going out into the yard, picking out a chicken and cooking it that night. And so there was something about why the generations before us, in some ways, even though always people will say, well, back in the 1800s, they died when they were, 40 years old. There's something to be said for the longevity of some of our ancestors. And that may not be all ancestors across the board, all ethnicities across the board, but there's something to be said for the foods that didn't exist then, that do now, and the diseases that we have now that we didn't have then. So, I'm a fan of, and if I don't necessarily know what it is, I mean, goodness knows we have the technology now. You can Google it on your phone. You can look it up right there.
Yeah,
I think one of the tricky things is that for the general population, it gets overwhelming. It starts to feel like I can't have anything, and that's not good. So it becomes a way that you align yourself with like-minded people, like-minded producers. There's the basics of it. Eating more local is always great. Eating closer to the time of harvest, eating in season. So there are ways to still feel really satisfied and really, really nourished without feeling like I can't have anything. I think one of our challenges in this country, and I remember it because my mother, as a small child, didn't work. My mother's generation started going to work when I was 5 years old. And when women went to work, the eating and the food at home changed. And then all of a sudden, I even remember this in my childhood, there were more convenience foods, there were more fast foods. Yeah. And so we become a society that needs it quick, that needs it fast. And one of the things that I do in one of my other talks is to talk about, well, how can you have it quick and fast, but still good and healthy? I think that is what's really important in the journey to better health, because we're used to the quick and fast and the convenient, but yet we haven't adapted and learned the ways to do it. There's nothing that makes me vibrate more or feel better than to have healthy food that's already prepared for me. And I may have been the one that did it, but at the same time, once you get fed that way and you get used to feeling good and you get detoxified in your body, then your body begins to return to its normal state, and then it craves it. And then it starts to really figure out how it can get it. So hope I didn't take us off track.
No, you didn't take us off track, because I think I probably even mentioned that I am actually redefining my diet again. And usually when I have guests, there's one thing that they say that kind of resonates with me. I always come back to it. And I have to come back to the statement that you made of that when you're first starting out on this journey, it's very difficult because you feel like you can't eat anything. And that's kind of where I am. I am evolving, learning more, because I just started eliminating even more things last week. So when I go and I look at, well, I can't really eat anything in my pantry. I mean, I just looked at my pantry. I'm like, well, I can just close this door forever. But when I look at different things, like, oh my goodness, if you want something quick, which is kind of, I guess, where myself and maybe others can relate, because you have to actually prepare. There is no more, I'm going to just go and grab X.
Right.
Eat it. You can't do that. And that's where it's a whole lifestyle change for me that I have to get used to. Because if I am at work and I say, okay, well, I need something, I might go to something healthy, go to Mediterranean, go whatever, fresh food. But, now I'm looking at that, half of that is out of the question.
Yeah. Well, I actually saw the light bulb go off in your eyes when I said sometimes you find yourself in a situation where you can't eat anything. I saw the light bulb.
Yes.
And I recognize it because I have been on that journey myself for about 15 years. You name the diet and the health approach, I've been on it and through it. In fact, I'm rereading a book right now, which I would really recommend to your viewers because it's not super clinical, but it really, really explains the dilemma that many of us have been caught in. And it's called The Plant Paradox. It's written by Gundry. He was actually a pediatric cardiologist, and he actually invented a valve called the Gundry, I think it's called the Gundry valve, and it was for pediatric heart surgery. But despite the fact that he was running 20 miles a week and, he was starving, he had 70 pounds of weight on that he couldn't get off. And so he began his journey, and he wrote a book called The Plant Paradox. And I forget exactly how I landed on it, but after being vegan for a couple years, and by the way, I know more sick vegans and vegetarians than I do of any other population. Why is that? Because all plants are not good for all people. And so it's a really interesting book that explains how certain properties in food, and I'll just name one today, called lectins, have a certain sort of chain reaction physiological response that makes some plants not good for a lot of people. So the reason I bring that in and I bring that up is we're all on the journey. We all have to figure it out for ourselves. You may meet a mainstream doctor and they say to you, do these 3 things, take this 1 pill and you'll be healed. But for most of us, it's a journey. And we have to figure out what parts of the journey we're ready to accept and shift on. So that's just one example of, why sometimes when we feel like we can't eat anything, we have to just keep exploring. Shelia, I do just want to touch on one thing that you said, which was, I don't feel like I can eat anything in my pantry, now that you have this knowledge and the information. And the reality is if there's food in the pantry, it means that on some level, it's been processed, right?
Right.
The food that most of us can eat is in the ground, or it's fresh, it's in the refrigerator. So I would say for your viewers, if you only did one thing to start to change your health, is to just eat more fresh. And yes, that does mean you might need to prepare more. But again, we'll save that for another talk, another day, another presentation, because I have a lot of strategies that I can share that it's a theory that I've come up with through my health coaching training, and it's called cook once, eat twice. And so that does mean preparing, but you can do it in a way that's super exciting, interesting, streamlined, great for multitaskers. But in terms of, what can you do right away? You can eat less processed and you can eat more fresh. And yes, sometimes more fresh means more trips to the grocery store and a little bit more preparing, but I have lots of strategies that can streamline that we can share with your viewers down the road. So yeah, I understand not being able to eat much from your pantry because it's been processed. Right. And, that makes it tough. And I will just encourage you and your viewers, while I re-encourage myself, there may be a time of elimination. You may be eliminating nuts and beans and seeds and grains and things, but it might not be forever. It might just be for a period of time. So I think the psychology to put in your mind, which is what I do, I say to myself, I'm not having that right now. Because I think when we set ourselves up for, I can't have that, we become really disenfranchised with ourselves and our health and other things that are going on, right? That's not on my menu right now, but I'll circle back to that when that's going to be right for my body. And I do believe that. I believe in periods of elimination, periods of intermittent fasting to just let things calm down and heal. So, yeah. So I know one of the things that you had mentioned today that we might have some time to talk about is the process for sugar and how it actually ends up on our table. I don't know if we still have time to talk about that or not, but if you want to, we can
we
talk
still have about 30 minutes.
Okay. Well, I definitely wanted to share this because before I researched it, I was disconnected from how does the little teaspoon of sugar get to your house? And the truth of the matter is, even though sugar starts as a plant, and we don't think about it like that, but we've got a thick stalk and we've got leaves. This is sugar. So how does it end up the way that it does, not just in our food, but on our table in general? So I did want to share this. So sugar in its plant form is transformed from its original plant form, and it's more or less pulverized, crushed, soaked, squeezed from the sugarcane plant. So that produces a juice, just like, an orange juice or something else. So it's boiled, this is at high heat, into a super thick syrup that eventually crystallizes. And in your mind, that's a little closer to what you know about sugar because you get it and it's dry. But from there, it's spun in a centrifuge. What does that do? It sucks all the water, the liquid, out of it. And that gets basically produced to raw sugar, which you might be thinking is, oh, that's what I see in the store when I see that brown sugar. However, from there, it's transported to refineries. These are like big production plants where it's purified. Thank goodness, right? Because if you think about it, it's a plant. It's grown outdoors. It's being carted and transformed. So we want it to be purified, right? So raw sugar then is remelted again to remove color, and we're going to come back to that later if we have time, and additional impurities. So sugar then gets crystallized a second time, and then those crystals are fully dried, and then they're prepared for packaging. So here's my point. It's a long way from its original plant root till it makes its way into your food or into your table. And this is how we are far removed from a lot of the food that we eat. So what does all of this mean? It means that we have to start thinking about the journey of food, how it is transformed, processed, heated, dried, etc., and what happens to it when we consume it and eat it. And in general rule of thumb, the less processed and the less far removed your food is from production, the better it is, the more prebiotic, the more probiotic, the more nutrient that it has. So I did want to share that just as a point of reference, not just to sugar, but to the production of all food. So thanks for letting me do that.
Yeah, of course, of course. We are going to take a quick 30-second break, and we are going to be right back. So just hold on 1 second. We'll be right back. we are back. We are back. So we're going to get right back to our discussion, which has been really, really good so far. I'm hoping that the audience has gotten a lot of information and a lot of just ideas on what they can do to improve their health, and also to maybe think about how much sugar you consume and what it's doing to your body, and how you can maybe eliminate some of it. And just take it slow. It doesn't have to be drastic. But once you become aware of it, it does help for you to really think about what you're doing and start to slow that down. 100 pounds per person. I was gasping in my mind. That's a lot of sugar. That's a lot of sugar. And considering there are many people who don't even consume it. A bag of sugar lasts, I think I've probably had the one I've had for 5 years.
Right, me too.
Yeah, because I pull it out on holidays to make something, holiday-ish for the family, but I've had it for a long time. But, and you did kind of answer this question, but I do want to go back to it just a little bit and just kind of hone in this information, because you talked about how sugar is processed, but, tapped on kind of why it's not good for us, but maybe even repeat that and just kind of say it in a different way, because I want people to really come out with the knowledge of why sugar in large amounts is not a good thing for us to have in our diet.
Right. Okay, sure. Thank you for the question. So if I give it to you at a very high level, too much sugar consumption creates inflammation in the body. And if that's all you knew and all you retained, I think that would be a good marker to sort of second guess how much you're using. But I want to give you the science behind it and the acknowledgement of where this data comes from. Because as I was researching this topic, it was super, super simple and easy, even upon a Google search, to learn more about sugar and inflammation, but also why inflammation in the body is not good for health. And the information I'm presenting to you now comes from a recent Mayo Clinic update. That original research was done in 2019, but it's for sure it's ongoing, and it is not limited to the Mayo Clinic. But their primary research showed that what you eat affects something called your C-reactive protein, CRP. And you might have seen this on your blood work before, or your doctor, based on what might be going on with your health, might have ordered this for your blood work. So some foods, like processed sugars, which we've been talking about today, what they do is they increase the inflammatory messengers, which can put you at risk for chronic inflammation. So what happens with sugar is it stimulates the production of free fatty acids in the liver. And our liver is our body's main filter. And once processed, these compounds can trigger, especially at the higher levels, the inflammatory processes in the body. So when our body is chronically inflamed, this is when you are susceptible to two things: disease and decreased immunity. And right now in our country, one of the most critical times in my lifetime, increased immunity and strong immunity is more important than any other time that I can think of. So having real control over the amount of sugar we take and the foods we eat in order to keep our bodies at a non-inflamed state is so important. And, at the same time, I think what's powerful about it is it gives us some control. So we have control over what we eat. Therefore, we have some control over our health. So that's sort of the main reason why we're looking at sugar today and what it does within the body, and how we have control over longevity and health when we really start thinking about what we eat. Now, specific sugar aside, we have a population that has uncontrolled blood sugar due to different health conditions like diabetes, for example. And while there are some solutions to manage diabetes that are pharmaceutical related, there are also solutions that are diet related. And the truth of the matter is having uncontrolled blood sugar is bad for the body in many, many ways, and it can affect organs and tissues and cells. And for someone with diabetes who maybe doesn't have control over that DNA, uncontrolled sugar in our bodies, if we don't have diabetes, is bad too, for all the same reasons. So I hope that answered your question, Sheila.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it did. It did. Thank you. Thank you. I just and I turned off the two person because I am taking notes. So just so you know, that's why I have Susan on to really talk to us about different subjects. I will have her back, is because some of the information she gives is really important, and you can't retain it all. So if you're looking at this, and I should have said this in the beginning, really consider just getting a piece of paper because this does stream live. So it's not that it's going to repeat often. But even if our last 20 minutes or so, if she has said something that has really resonated with you, then maybe consider just kind of jotting that down, because as she even mentioned, we also do have, fortunately, Google. And you can Google some of the things that she says, some of the words that she's saying, just in case you're not understanding exactly the context of what the conversation is right now, because this might be new to some people, but it's something that's really important to learn. I'm going to ask another question, though, about artificial sweeteners, because we have a lot of people do think about reducing sugar, but they reduce sugar by adding in an artificial sweetener. And some I know have more concerns than others, but I would like to give you the opportunity to talk about that just a little bit so that we can understand if something that we should be substituting, if it's something that we shouldn't, and do more research on ourselves, of course, but just kind of what your thoughts are on this subject.
Yeah, thank you for that question. And like you said, this is a lot of information. And in your field, where what you're trying to do with your show is to instill holistic health for your viewers, I think that this topic on artificial sweeteners could easily be, an entire topic that you might explore in the future. I will comment high level, and I'll also start with just a personal story and an antidote that I believe just underscores that in each of us, we have the innate ability to tap into our own intuition, to know what food is good for us and what food is not good for us. Your viewers that are watching today, I'm quite sure, have had a drink, a fruit, a vegetable, a substance in their lifetime that right away the body sent a message or a signal that said, this is not good for you. It could be indigestion, gas, bloating, a weird unidentified sensation. But in our mind, we can have connected it to something that maybe we've consumed. So I do encourage everyone to do all of their own due diligence and research. But on the topic of sweeteners, artificial sweeteners specifically, what I want to say, if we think back to the beginning of our show today, we talked about food falling into different categories: carbohydrate, fat, and protein. Artificial sweeteners are synthetic. These are things that are designed and made in a laboratory. What does it mean to have something that's synthetic? It means that there's no whole food and there's no nutrition. I understand that there was a movement through our country to make foods fat-free and low-fat, and to remove calories from food, and that many products have been created and invented because of that movement. What I stand on is the research by an organization called CSPI, And I'll repeat that in case your viewers are making any notes. CSPI, it's the Center for Science in Public Health. And this is an organization that has been fervent about things like high fructose corn syrup, and specifically about artificial sweeteners. And so as things come along in our food supply, they will rate them. The CSPI will rate them in terms of their safety to the public. And so when artificial sweeteners first were out, they used to be rated safe. Some number of years later, their rating was changed to use them with caution. And in 2016, so that's been what, 5-6 years ago, the rating was changed to avoid. So when artificial sweeteners hit the mainstream American supply food chain, they were safe, then they were cautious, now they're rated as avoid. There's a reason for that. The major problem with artificial sweeteners is that they are a neurotoxin. So they are toxic to our nervous system. And the primary research that's been done on these that is available shows that there's two primary risks. One is to your hormones, and that affects your glucose levels, your sugar, and how it rises, and the harm to your gut bacteria. We all have within the lining of our gut bacterias, which are good, which help us break down waste and eliminate. And additional studies have been done on these artificial sweeteners, of course, on rats, and they show serious issues with the metabolism. And shockingly, some of the subjects in these studies develop lymphoma, which is cancer. And these artificial sweeteners, which are highly used as a baking substitute, like, you know, in your cakes and whatever you're baking, it has been shown that when they're heated at high heat, it actually does sort of a transformation that creates contaminants within them that cause cancer. So I understand the need to have food to taste sweet. What I'm here to tell you is there's lots of other ways to sweeten your food or to make your food taste good without using artificial sweeteners, which are a known neurotoxin, which disrupts the entire body's function. So if you know even one person in your family that is using these, the people that I know, and I have one family member left that's using it, are just addicted to it. And what I know after talking to hundreds of people, that as much they are used to sweeten things, it doesn't take care of the sweet craving. It almost has you want more of it because it affects the neurotransmitters in your brain. And one packet of Splenda for my family members not enough, two's not enough. And so I would highly recommend avoiding them altogether and getting creative about how to make your food more satisfying using your ingenuity and your creativity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really good. Yeah, really good explanation. And I have read too that artificial sweeteners actually are engineered to be sweeter than sugar. So
much sweeter.
Yeah. So it really, like you say, it changes, number one, what your taste sensations are. And it also, of course, has no calories, but the damage that it can do to your body probably negates the fact that you could sweeten with something else or even use a little bit of sugar instead of it.
Yeah, I mean, we have quite a conundrum in this country, even when it just relates to sodas, where sodas have been deemed bad, but soda in its form originally, it never had high fructose corn syrup in it. It just had sugar. So if I was going to choose a soda, I would choose an old school Coca-Cola over a re-engineered one with high fructose corn syrup. Having said that, some of our belief is a soda is bad, but a diet soda is good. A diet soda is sweetened with an artificial sweetener.
Right. And
I know personally in one case of a family member of my children's school that had developed all of these very, very weird neurological symptoms. And it was tracked back to the addiction to diet soda. And in case in point, in one other example, I had a doctor who was a patient of mine, and she was addicted to Diet Coke. She was legitimately addicted to Diet Coke. That was her drug of choice, if you will. We all have cravings for certain things. And so it was a very difficult hamster wheel for her to get off of, to break this sort of I need it kind of a feeling. So
it's really difficult for people when they get used to drinking something and also think that it's healthy. That's the thing. And I was going to say, if you travel, so when you go to other countries, even if you go to Mexico and you order a soda, their soda actually is sweetened with sugar.
Tastes totally different.
Yeah, it tastes totally different. It's not high fructose anything. I don't even know if they have high fructose corn syrup in Europe. I don't think they do. I don't drink soda, so I don't really know. But I don't think that they do in their sodas. My kids still drink sodas on occasion, so I do see what they drink. But
and here's my thing, not to interrupt you, but I do believe in the concept of everything in moderation. And if you are going to choose a soda once or twice a year, I say know your soda, read your soda, read what's inside your soda. Just go in with your eyes open, and because there is something to be said for what you said. No, not all sodas are made the same. Not all sodas within different countries are made the same. So this is our power, knowledge.
Yeah. Right. And it's not that it's not that I completely give up things and it's like I never touch them, because I'm like you. I do think that you can try anything, especially if it's something that you miss. But if you don't drink soda and you go to drink it, it actually is not tasteful. The sweetened sodas taste like they're just pure sugar, and the ones that are artificially sweetened taste like they have chemicals. So your taste buds actually change depending on what your diet is. But no, I don't really eliminate, unless I know it's something absolutely terrible, but I don't really eliminate anything from my diet because I don't really want to feel deprived. The reason why I'm eliminating now is just because I'm on a probably 1 year journey. I think it probably will take a year, maybe a little longer, in order to clear out my gut and kind of get my body back to where it should be. But and after that, I'm not going to go gung-ho on everything, but I will have learned a little bit more on what my body needs and what it needs to function properly. So that's all I'm saying. Not that I'm drastically saying to anybody, and you aren't either, to go out and really just totally change everything for your health, unless you need to. You have to do what is best for you. You actually do. So we have probably about 7-8 minutes left, but I did want to ask you, well, I have two questions I really want to ask you. And one of them is, how do you reduce inflammation in your body? We kind of touched on this. We touch on a little bit of points as we're talking, but direct question and direct answer, I think, will help our listeners and also watchers to know clearer what we're trying to say.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. And I think you're right. I think that we have sort of intertwined and weaved through the conversation, but I like to have things spelled out for me. So to repeat the things that we have talked about, the simplest thing that people can start to do is become more educated about anti-inflammatory foods. And so if folks want to write that down, you can Google anti-inflammatory diet, but I will tell you this. What it is what I already said. It's more fresh fruits and vegetables, local and pasteurized, or local and grass-fed meats, and it is less processed food. So anti-inflammatory diet is that essentially. Now there are individual things for different disease states and health needs, but at the same time, the general concept is to eat more fresh, to eat more local, but research anti-inflammatory foods and kind of look at that list compared to your needs. So the one thing I want to say about the fruits and vegetables is when my work with clients one-on-one, And that's what I do. I do a lot of one-on-one health coaching, a lot of talks like this, group presentations, workshops. And what I have found in working with people is that people either have a set of vegetables. They go to the grocery store, they buy a cucumber, they buy a tomato, they buy an onion, they buy a romaine lettuce, that's it. And they eat those same vegetables over and over again. To have health, we have to eat from the bounty that is available. And in some studies, in fact, there's another book out, if you want to give this to the readers, it's something called the Walls Protocol, W-A-H-L-S. This was a lady, Terry Walls, who had MS and a extremely depleted immune system. And one of her theories is to eat 200 vegetables, the variety of 200 vegetables a year. And so that means you got to get out of your 7 that you buy at the grocery store and expand and really fill your plate with color, because, you know, the color in a beet does so much for your blood, your heart, your circulation. The color in the deep leafy greens does so much in terms of minerals and digestion and gut health. So to eat the same things over and over again is going to be the thing that gets you the same result over and over again. So I highly recommend that. Increasing the omegas, fatty acids, in things like tuna, if you can tolerate it, especially if you don't have any mercury sensitivities, but salmon and walnuts, to really control that blood sugar so that you're not having these constant spikes throughout the day, to get your blood sugar to stabilize. And you can purchase a simple blood sugar machine and test your blood yourself, especially if you have a struggle that's unidentified. This again gives you power for yourself. I think one of the biggest things, especially that Sheila, you and I resonate on, because we go so far back into the fitness career. I, had my fitness foundation at a very young age, but then explored Pilates and yoga and Qigong, and like you who did personal training and boot camps. Fitness is a huge piece of being able to have inflammation move in the body. And yet I meet people all the time that have a limitation and they cannot perform these forms of fitness. Well, you can get a simple rebounder, small mini trampoline, and get on it and not jump at all, but just bounce on it. That is going to move and drain the lymph. Those pieces are so important. So
we're going to stop right there. So I have Susan's information if you want to contact her, her Instagram, her Facebook information right here on the bottom of the screen. So that's the way you can get more information about Susan. She will be back. So she will be back. And when she comes back the next time, we will actually do live. So if you have any questions or comments, you can actually ask them too at that time. It'll be live through Facebook, along with our other broadcast channels, which are Google TV, Android TV, and Chromecast. And there's a couple more. So I'm going to thank you, Susan. Thank you so much. And then I'm going to close out. I have just a minute to close out, but I'm going to at least let you know that we certainly appreciate all the knowledge and all of the effort that you have been able to go through in order to impart this information to us. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. And on that note, I want to thank you for joining me on Living Well with Dr. Shelia. Every Thursday at noon, you'll see this show. Just a reminder, if you need to contact me, you can contact me through, I'll put my information up here, right here. You can go on my website. You can find me. I actually help people eliminate and reduce their bladder leaks. So if that is an issue that you have, nobody has to know but me. But by all means, please contact me. Go look on my website, see if there's anything that I can help you with. Until next time, thank you all so much for joining, and take care. Bye-bye.